BDS is Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions. It's a global campaign based on a Palestinian civil society call that came out in 2005, a year after the International Court of Justice ruling against Israel's wall in the occupied territories. Basically, it calls for boycotting, divesting from, and imposing sanctions on Israel until it ends its occupation of the 1967 territories, including the wall and the settlements and so on. The second demand is to end its system of racial discrimination inside Israel itself against the Palestinian citizens of Israel. The third and foremost demand is to recognize and enable the right of return for Palestinian refugees. The BDS call's main achievement is to bring back the basic human rights under international law of the entire Palestinian people to the fore. And that was the main achievement. We've built a network over the last five and a half years, a global network of social movements, trade unions, women's unions, faith-based communities and students groups and so on, that have been empowered by BDS and that know now how to stand in solidarity with Palestine in a very effective and morally consistent way. The rationale is that the international community, so to speak, under the hegemony of the US and the EU bureaucracy, has failed miserably to hold Israel accountable to international law. So they couldn't stop Israel from building the wall despite the court decision against it. They couldn't end the settlements. The US just vetoed its own position, which sees settlements as illegal and as an obstacle to peace. They just vetoed against that resolution at the UN Security Council. Luckily, Britain supported that resolution. So if the international community cannot even hold Israel to account to stop clearly 100% illegal settlements, we cannot expect that international community to bring us our rights, ending the occupation, ending apartheid in Israel, as well as the right of return. So we must go, as our South African comrades did in the past, in their fight against apartheid, to go to the international civil society, not governments, hoping that a grassroots movement would eventually pressure governments to do the right thing and impose sanctions on Israel. We're not singling out Israel. It's the Western governments, the US, the UK, Western Europe, are the ones singling out Israel by providing so much support, unchecked support to Israel, unconditional support in all forms, military, intelligence, economic, academic, cultural, every kind of support to Israel in the tune of billions and billions of dollars every single year, and ignoring Israel's massive record of human rights violations, including caste-led, where more than 1,500 Palestinians were killed in Gaza, predominantly civilians, tens of thousands injured, houses destroyed, mosques, schools, UN, and so on. This level of impunity, while you're giving so much support, means that you're complicit. Western governments are complicit in maintaining Israel's regime of oppression. Therefore, there's a responsibility that comes with this. So they're singling out Israel, treating it as a state above the law of nations. We're not calling for any special treatment for Israel. We're calling for treating Israel just like any other country committing similar crimes and violating international law as persistently. In Israel, we have not seen any parts of governments amenable to reform. The entire Israeli government is on the very far right, including some fascist elements, and there is no way, absolutely no way, to make it move in the right direction and to concede on Palestinian rights without massive pressure. It was the same with South Africa. It was the same with many other regimes that were practicing and imposing oppression upon a people, or practicing apartheid or occupation or colonialism. You needed absolutely international solidarity to bring them to account. The accusation that BDS is anti-Semitic somehow is not just totally categorically false. It itself is an anti-Semitic statement because it assumes any attack on Israel is an attack against world Jewry. And this equates Jewish communities in the world with Israel, making them all monolithic, as if they all have one mind, one ideology, and that's a very anti-Semitic and dangerous statement to make. The other thing is the BDS movement is based on international law and basic universal human rights. We're completely opposed to all forms of racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, any form of racism, because we believe that all humans deserve equal rights regardless of their identity. Third, the number of active Jewish citizens in the leadership of the BDS movement in the West is disproportionately high. Many of our partners doing BDS in the UK, in the US, in Canada, and France are Jewish. And we're proud of that. Within Israel itself, there's a Boycott from Within group, which is a number of Israeli academics, intellectuals, activists, students who have adopted the BDS call and are our partners inside Israel. They help us in many campaigns, convincing artists not to perform in Israel, convincing companies to pull out of Israel, and so on and so forth. So saying that BDS is anti-Semitic is the same as saying a statement, if you boycott Saudi Arabia, for example, that would be Islamophobic. A boycott against Saudi Arabia over its human rights record has nothing to do with Islamophobia. It's opposition to massive repression and massive violation of human rights and international law. And that's how it should be viewed in the Israeli case. We should not allow double standard and hypocrisy.